Welcome everybody on day 18th of the book reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. How the pain body feeds on your thoughts. The pain body awakens from its dormancy when it gets hungry, when it's time to replenish itself. Alternatively, it may get triggered by an event at any time. The pain body that is ready to feed can use the most insignificant event as a trigger. Something somebody says or does, or even a thought. If you live alone or there is nobody around at the time, the pain body will feed on your thoughts. Suddenly, your thinking becomes deeply negative. You were most likely unaware that just prior to the influx of negative thinking, a wave of emotion invaded your mind as a dark and heavy mood, as anxiety or fairy anger. All thought is energy, and the pain body is now feeding on the energy of thoughts. But it cannot feed on any thought. You don't need to be particularly sensitive to notice that a positive thought has a totally different feeling tone than a negative tone. It is the same energy, but it vibrates at a different frequency. A happy, positive thought is indigestible to the pain body. It can only feed on negative thoughts because only those thoughts are compatible with its own energy field. All things are vibrating energy fields in ceaseless motion. The chair you sit on, the book you are holding in your hands appear solid and motionless only because that is how your senses perceive their vibrational frequency. That is to say, the incessant movement of the molecules, atoms, electrons, and subatomic particles that together create what you perceive as chair, a book, a tree, or a body. What we perceive as physical matter is energy vibrating, moving at particular range of frequencies. Thoughts consist of the same energy vibrating at higher frequency than matter, which is why they cannot be seen or touched. Thoughts have their own range of frequencies, which negative thoughts at the lower end of the scale and positive thoughts at the higher. The vibrational frequency of the pain body resonates with that of the negative thoughts, which is why only those thoughts can feed the pain body. The usual pattern of thought creating emotion is reversed in the case of the pain body, at least initially. Emotion from the pain body quickly gains control of your thinking, and once your mind has been taken over by the pain body, your thinking becomes negative. The voice in your head will be telling sad, anxious, or angry stories about yourself or your life, about other people, about past, future, or imaginary events. The voice will be blaming, accusing, complaining, imagining, and you are totally identified with whatever the voice says and believe all its distorted thoughts. At that point, the addiction to unhappiness has set in. It is not so much that you cannot stop your train of negative thoughts, but that you don't want to. This is because the pain body at that time is living through you, pretending to be you, and the pain is pleasure. It eagerly devours every negative thought. In fact, the usual voice in your head has now become the voice of the pain body. It has taken over the internal dialogue. The vicious circle becomes established between the pain body and your thinking. Every thought feeds the pain body, and in turn, the pain body generates more thoughts. At the same point, after a few hours or even a few days, it has replenished itself and returns to its dormant stage, leaving behind a depleted organism and a body that is much more susceptible to illness. If that sounds to you like a psychic parasite, you are right. That's exactly what it is. It's very important to actually get to this fact how everything is, so strongly controlled by the pain body कि वो एक पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम में माइंड को भी रोप इन कर लेता है. Because the whole concept, everything starts from a thought. एक थॉट आती है, उस थॉट से एक कुछ हमारे अंदर बॉडी के अंदर इमोशंस जनरेट होते हैं. वो इमोशंस जो हैं आपकी एनर्जी बॉडी, दैट इज योर ऑरा, वहां पे नेगेटिव या डर्टी एनर्जी, नेगेटिव एनर्जी, कुछ ना कुछ वहां पे इम्पैक्ट होना शुरू होता है. एंड स्लोली with the connection of your energy body with your physical body, वो patterns, negative energy starts transferring inside the physical body, resulting in states of diseases, states of negativity, states of being depressed, or whatever, any kind of a negative feeling or thought pattern. Interesting how the pain body takes over the mind is that इसकी memory pattern इतना strong है और सारा का सारा connection through the energy body of the mind towards is with this pain body, which actually stores all the information. So any kind of a trauma which you faced in this life, in your childhood, in your upbringing, is stored in your body. It's not stored anywhere else. तो वो वहां पे जब वो इकट्ठा हो रहा है एंड इज बीइंग स्टोर्ड देयर ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, और उस पे सिमिलर इवेंट्स हो रहे हैं, they are empowering that trauma which is stored in your body, that is the pain body. And when it gets triggered, it will hijack the mind and you will only and only think about those negative thoughts. It's actually a hijack of the mind by the pain body. So you're so consumed by that thought which is coming through this pain body कि mind positive होना भी चाहे वो हो ही नहीं पाता है, because that's the power of this physical body. So end of the day, this is a body which belongs to us and this is a mind which belongs to us. But जब ये thought pain body थॉट को कंट्रोल करके माइंड को टेक ओवर करती है, यू आर इन दैट स्टेट वेयर इट्स फॉर एग्जांपल इट्स अ स्टेट वेयर यार मेरे से कुछ ठीक हो ही नहीं रहा, आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, इट्स लाइक समबडी हैज टेकन ओवर, इट्स लाइक अ हाईजैक एंड इट इज प्रीटी स्ट्रॉन्ग, क्योंकि हमने उस ट्रॉमा को अपनी बॉडी में एक एड्रेस दिया हुआ है. by not addressing that situation when it occurred the first time. So if you address it at that time, you will not store that trauma in your body, because when you explore it, because even if you want, you can explore that trauma now through healings or alternative modalities, hypnotherapy, whatever. You are actually going back in time where that trauma happened for the first time, because it has created that so much of an impact that it affects that body part in a much, much worse manner. I mean, alternative modalities just work with what is there in your energy body or what is there in your subconscious mind. और उसका impact pain body से आता है, because that's where you store it. Everybody is clear with the concept of pain body, because pain body के आगे भी एक body होती है, that is very important. That comes in the next chapter. So pain body is that identification of that storage of koi lafda, koi trauma in your body. That's the pain body because that has a memory. And that memory is derived by that trauma. Jahan jahan wo memory hai, those are the body parts that can or will start affecting you in your due course till the time that trauma is not resolved, because that is unresolved trauma stored in a body part. That is your pain body. तो जब वहां ऑपरेट होता है, इट्स लाइक अ हाईजैक ऑफ द माइंड. How the pain body feeds on drama. If there are other people around, preferably your partner or a close family member, the pain body will attempt to provoke them, push their buttons, as the expression goes, so it can feed on ensuing drama. Pain bodies love intimate relationships and families because that is where they get most of their food. It is hard to resist another person's pain body that is determined to draw you into a reaction. Instinctively, it knows your weakest, most vulnerable points. If it doesn't succeed the first time, it will try again and again. It is raw emotion looking for more emotion. The other person's pain body wants to awaken yours so that both pain bodies can mutually energize each other. So in close relationship, this is more because maximum trauma जो हमारे यहाँ होता है, it is because of close relationships or what happened in that, with your parents, spouse, siblings, kids. Because whatever is happening outside, if that person is not known to you, there is not going to be any trigger. It's only with your closed ones that is where you feel that trigger. That is what creates that trauma or that unhappy event or that moment of negativity that gets stored. राज आते के अगर कोई आपको कुछ बोल देगा, यू लाइक हाँ यार चल, आई डोंट इवन नो दिस गाय, क्या हो गया, शायद कोई पागल होगा, दैट्स इट, यू जस्ट लेट इट बी. But if the same line is said by somebody who's close to you, that is where the hijacking starts. Because then that makes a lot of sense, because there is a connection and for which the pain body is interested. और वो एक मेमोरी एक बंदे के साथ रिलेशनशिप में खराब होती है, वो बार बार वो ट्रिगर बन जाता है और वो मेमोरी स्ट्रेंथन होती रहती है. सो दैट अनरिजॉल्व ट्रॉमा gets so badly strengthened inside your body that it manifests in the form of a disease. Many relationships go through violent and destructive pain body episodes at regular intervals. It is almost unbearably painful for a young child to have to witness the emotional violence of their parents' pain bodies. And yet, that is the fate of millions of children all over the world, the nightmare of their daily exercise. This is also one of the main ways in which the human pain body is passed on from generation to generation. After each episode, the partners make up, and there is an interval of relative peace to the limited extent that the ego allows it. Excessive consumption of alcohol will often activate the pain body, particularly in men, but also in some women. When a person becomes drunk, he goes through a complete personality change as the pain body takes him over. A deeply unconscious person whose pain body habitually replenishes itself through physical violence often directs it towards his spouse or children. When he becomes sober, he is truly sorry and may say he will never do this again, and he means it. The person who is talking and making promises, however, is not the entity that commits the violence. And so you can be sure that it will happen again and again unless he becomes present, recognize the pain body within himself, and thus disidentifies from it. In some cases, counseling can help him do that. Most pain bodies want to both inflict and suffer pain, but some are predominantly either perpetrators or victims. In either case, they feed on violence, whether emotional or physical. Some couples who may think they have fallen in love are actually feeling drawn to each other because their respective pain bodies complement each other. Sometimes the roles of the perpetrator and victim are already clearly prescribed that the time they meet. Some marriages that are thought to be made in heaven are actually made in hell. If you have ever lived with a cat, you will know that even when the cat seems to be asleep, it still knows what is going on because at the slightest unusual noise, its ears will move toward it and its eyes may open slightly. Dormant pain bodies are the same. On some level, they're still awake, ready to jump into action when an appropriate trigger presents itself. In intimate relationships, pain bodies are often clever enough to lie low until you start living together and preferably have signed a contract committing yourself to be with this person for the rest of your life. You don't just marry a wife or husband, you also marry his or her pain body, and your spouse marries yours. It can be quite a shock when, perhaps not long after moving in together, after the honeymoon, you find suddenly one day there is complete personality change in your partner. Her voice becomes harsh or shrill as she accuses you, blames you, or shouts at you, most likely over a relatively trivial matter. Or she becomes totally withdrawn. What's wrong? You ask. Nothing is wrong, she says. But the intensely hostile energy she emanates is saying everything is wrong. When you look into her eyes, there is no light in them anymore. It is as if a heavy veil has descended, and the being you know and love, which before was able to shine through her ego, is now totally obscured. A complete stranger seems to be looking back at you, and in her eyes, there is hatred, hostility, bitterness, or anger. When she speaks to you, it is not your spouse or partner who is speaking, but the pain body speaking through them. Whatever she is saying is the pain body's version of reality. A reality completely distorted by fear, hostility, anger, and a desire to inflict and receive more pain. At this point, you may wonder whether this is your parents' real face that you have never seen before, and whether you made a dreadful mistake in choosing this person. It is, of course, not the real face, just the pain body that has taken possession. It would be hard to find a partner who doesn't carry a pain body, because it would perhaps be wise to choose someone whose pain body is not excessively dense. So सारा का सारा जो clash है उसमें कहीं ना कहीं the pain body or the trauma stored in the body has a major role to play. Uska, that's like the root. That is what it drives. Because उस चीज में, उस ट्रिगर में बॉडी को अटेंशन मिल रही है, क्योंकि it's feeding on the negativity coming from your thoughts through your emotions into your aura and then entering your physical body, taking a residency there. So that trauma is taking a residency in your body and is now feeding upon it. And इस पेन बॉडी को ड्रामा तो बहुत ही पसंद है. He's like the drama king, the drama queen. Wants a drama in everything. And just notice when, when it's the state that this pain body is not dormant and it's active, and when you, look back at what you did, And you always wonder, "यार ये मैंने किया था? How can I do something like that?" Because that's actually not what you are. बट वो अंदर इतना ज्यादा डीप रूटेड है, चाहे वो आपका है या आपने कोई पेरेंट्स में देखा है या हो सकता है किसी एंसेस्टर का हो. इट कैन बी एनी पास्ट लाइफ ऑल्सो. एनीथिंग इज पॉसिबल. एनीथिंग एंड एवरीथिंग इज पॉसिबल. But you get so possessed and hijacked by this pain body and this trauma which is there in your soul, in your body, that at that time when you are reacting to that situation and the way you are reacting, you don't get to know. You get so overpowered. It's like, this pain body has hijacked, taken the possession of you, and it's, something else that is, it's not you, but it's some other entity that is speaking, which is just nothing but your own stored trauma throughout your past, if on this life, previous lives, or probably ancestors. Dense pain bodies. Some people carry dense pain bodies that are never completely dormant. They may be smiling and making polite conversation, but you do not need to be psychic to sense that seething ball of unhappy emotion in them just underneath the surface, waiting for the next event to react on. The next person to blame or confront, the next thing to be unhappy about. Their pain bodies can never get enough, are always hungry. They magnify the ego's need for enemies. Through their reactivity, relatively insignificant matters are blown up out of proportion as they try to pull other people into their drama by getting them to react. Some people, some get involved in protracted and ultimately pointless battles or court cases with organizations or individuals. Others are consumed by obsessive hatred towards an ex spouse or partner, unaware of the pain they carry inside. By their reaction, they project the pain into events and situations. Due to a complete lack of self awareness, they cannot tell the difference between an event and their reaction to the event. To them, the unhappiness and even the pain itself is out there in the event or situation. Being unconscious of their inner state, they don't even know that they are deeply unhappy, that they are suffering. Sometimes people with such dense pain bodies become activists fighting for a cause. The cause may indeed be worthy, and they are sometimes successful at first in getting things done. However, the negative energy that flows into what they say and do, and their unconscious need for enemies and conflict, tend to generate increasing opposition to their cause. Usually, they also end up creating enemies within their own organization because whatever they do, because wherever they go, they find reasons for feeling bad, and so their pain body continues to find exactly what it is looking for. So it is actually a manifestation of a dense pain body that you attract so many of these experiences. And the only way to resolve that is to resolve that unresolved trauma which you have actually given an address in your physical body. because जैसे जैसे आप उस unresolved trauma को खत्म करोगे through therapy or through counseling or through reading, whatever, you will slowly start, everything will slowly start making sense. And once you start getting that wisdom from that sense you're making, 50 to 60% this trauma will not bother you because now there is wisdom. So that trigger, जो ये करता है pain body, that trigger becomes, you become insensitive towards that trigger because you've actually gained the wisdom. जो कि पहले नहीं था, और you used to get triggered and used to start reacting. Entertainment, the media, and the pain body. If you were not familiar with our contemporary civilization, if you had come here from another age or another planet, one of the things that would amaze you is that millions of people love and pay money to watch humans kill and inflict pain on each other and call it entertainment. Why do violent films attract such large audiences? There is an entire industry, a large part of which fuels the human addiction to unhappiness. People obviously watch those films because they want to feel bad. What is it in humans that loves to feel bad and calls it good? The pain body, of course. A large part of the entertainment industry caters to it. So, in addition to reactivity, negative thinking, and personal drama, the pain body also renews itself vicariously through the cinema and television screen. Pain bodies write and produce these films, and pain bodies pay to watch them. It is always wrong to show and watch violence on television and the cinema screen. Does all such violence cater to pain body? At the current evolutionary stage of humanity, violence is still not only all pervasive, but even on the increase as the old egoic consciousness, amplified by the collective pain body, intensifies prior to its inevitable demise. If films show violence in its wider context, if they show its origin and its consequence, show what it does to the victim as well as to the perpetrator, show the collective unconsciousness that lies behind it, and it is passed on from generation to generation. The anger and hatred that lives in humans as the pain body. Then those films can fulfill a vital function in the awakening of humanity. They can act as a mirror in which humanity sees its own insanity, that in you which recognizes madness as madness, even if it's not your own, is sanity. Is the rising awareness, is the end of insanity. Such films do exist and do not fuel the pain body. Some of the best anti war films are films that show the reality of war rather than a glamorized version of it. The pain body can only feed on films in which violence is portrayed as normal or even desirable human behavior, or that glorify violence with the sole purpose of generating negative emotion in the viewer and so become a fix for the pain addicted pain body. The popular tabloids press does not primarily sell news but negative emotion, food for the pain body. Outrage screams the 3-inch headlines or bastards. The British tabloid press excels at it. They know that negative emotion sells far more paper than news does. There is a tendency in the news media in general, including television, to thrive on negative news. The worst thing get, the more excited the presenter become, and often the negative excitement is generated by the media itself. Pain bodies, they just love it. So, it's very easy for us to, I'm just enjoying a good series on Netflix, or I'm just enjoying this movie. But whatever is it that you're feeding your senses, and primarily what we are talking about is the vision, because you're seeing or you're hearing, they are going to create impressions inside of you. And who is manifesting these expressions is your ego, is your pain body, because usko isme maza aa raha hai. I mean, I remember long back, There was some, I think, Indian serial. So there was a lot of, politics in the family, and, too much of gossiping, and, हर टाइम में कुछ ना कुछ कलेश ही खड़ा हो रहा होता था उसे. I watched it 2 3 times, like, नहीं यार, something I don't want to see. Why are we seeing this? But a lot of people see it. The reason is here. So what we are feeding our five senses, very clear, decides what is going to be manifest, because that's, see, anything and everything is creating an impression in your mind. So if you are feeding on gossip, or if you are feeding on violence, it's going to create an impression somewhere or the other. And it's a strong desire of your egoic pain body that usko usme maza aa raha hai. When it's rightly said, humans is the only lineage where killing में भी लोगों को मजा आ रहा है. I mean, at the end of the day, rationally, a person is losing his life as an individual entity, and that's entertainment for everyone. And fully realizing it at one point of time that everything is one. जो सांस मेरे अंदर है वो भी उसी ह्यूमन के अंदर सेम सांस है. सो वी आर द सेम कॉन्शियसनेस एट दैट सोर्स लेवल. बट फिर भी मार के मजा आ रहा है, और वो एक एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री बन गई विच इज थ्राइविंग ऑन इट, only and only because the pain body wants to feed itself on it. And that is feeding it that negativity so that it can, stay alive. So that's the impression you are doing when you're watching all these violence and everything. It's very important to be very, very cautious of what is it that you are feeding your five senses, because mind is five senses से चल रहा है. और जब पेन बॉडी माइंड को हाईजैक करेगी तो ये फाइव सेंसेस को भी हाईजैक करेगी. The collective female pain body, the collective dimension of the pain body has different strands in it. Tribes, nations, races all have their own collective pain body. Some heavier than other, and most members of that tribe, nation, or race have a share in it to a greater or lesser degree. Almost every woman has a share in the collective female pain body, which tends to become activated, particularly just prior to the time of menstruation. At that time, many women become overwhelmed by intense negative emotion. The suppression of the feminine principle, especially over the past 2000 years, has enabled the ego to gain absolute supremacy in the collective human psyche. Although women have egos, of course, the ego can take root and grow more easily in the male form than in the female. That is because women are less mind identified than men. They are more in touch with the inner body and the intelligence of the organism where the intuitive faculties originate. The female form is less rigidly encapsulated than the male, has greater openness and sensitivity towards other life forms, and is more attuned to the natural world. If the balance between male and female energies has not been destroyed on our plant, the ego's growth would have been greatly curtailed. We would not have declared war on nature, and we would not be so completely alienated from our being. Nobody knows the exact figure because the gods were not cared, but it seems certain that during a 300-year period, between 3 and 5 million women were tortured and killed by the Holy Inquisition, an institution found by the Roman Catholic Church to suppress mercy. This sure ranks together with the Holocaust as one of the darkest chapters in human history. It was enough for a woman to show a love for animals, walk alone in the fields or woods, or gather medicinal plants to be branded a witch, then tortured and burned at the stake. The sacred feminine was declared demonic, and an entire dimension largely disappeared from human experience. Other cultures and religions, such as Judaism, Islam, and even Buddhism, also suppressed the female dimension, although in a less violent way. Women's status was reduced to being childbearers and men's property. Males who denied the feminine even within themselves were now running the world, a world that was totally out of balance. The rest is history, or rather, a case history of insanity. Who was responsible for this fear of the feminine that could only be described as acute collective paranoia? We could say, of course, men were responsible, but then why in many ancient pre-Christian civilizations such as the Sumerian, Egyptian, and Celtic were women respected and the feminine principle not feared but revered? What is it that suddenly made men feel threatened by the female? The evolving ego in them. It knew it could gain full control of our planet only through the male form, and to do so, it had to render the female powerless. In time, the ego also took over most women, although it could never become as deeply entrenched in them as in men. We now have a situation in which the suppression of the feminine has become internalized even in most women. The sacred feminine, because it is suppressed, is felt by many women as emotional pain. In fact, it has become part of their pain body together with the accumulated pain suffered by women over millennia through childbirth, rape, slavery, torture, and violence. But things are changing rapidly now, with many people becoming more conscious. The ego is losing its hold on the human mind because the ego was never as deeply rooted in women. It is losing its hold on women more quickly than on men. So, that's the reason why, because as the major difference between two genders, male and female, is that the female gender has the capability and the capacity to reproduce. So that gives it a very angle of nurturance to it, because in order to produce something, a life out of you, you need to have those inherent qualities of nurturance. But during the course of time, that, because see, as a female, जो आपके अंदर hormones है या whatever है, they're more tuned towards nurturance. But जैसे जैसे time बढ़ता गया, ठीक है? Now at the end of the day, everybody sitting here has come from a female. Okay? So there were times when this thought that only the women can produce, what if they get empowered, they should be only into nurturance, तो वो बहुत सप्रेस करने की कोशिश की गई थी कि इनको it's better to suppress them rather than empower them. And there was a lot of mass killings done. बहुत बहुत हुआ. It's there in the history. In fact, a lot of religions, Gautam Buddha, known as the most enlightened man, for a good period of time, never took females as his disciples. And in Buddhism, there's a very interesting fact, जो उनके वो होते हैं ना, महातलेश्वर है, कुछ ऐसे कुछ होता है, they cannot be females, they have to be males. They have a specific name, I'm forgetting the name, but उनके होते हैं 25 तीरंतंकार, ऐसे कुछ बुद्धिज्म में होता है. So there was one lady who was so powerful. This was covered in one of the books by Osho. Just because the faith of Buddhism should not be spoiled, in all Buddhist books after this lady passed away, they made the changes and changed her name from female to a male name, and that you know practice is still going on. Tiranthankars. So as this is there in Buddhism till date, that you cannot have a female as a Tiranthankar. Whereas now the whole concept of is, yes, obviously you have different set of reproductive organs, but there is a female energy and there is a male energy in all of us. That is called the yin and the yang. It is just that when you are a masculine male, the female energy is less than 50 and the male energy is more than 50. Whereas when it's, the case of a gay in a human man with, male reproductive organs, the female energy in the body is more and the male energy is less. So, hamare andar, each one of us, be it a man, be it a female, has, the yin as well as the yang, the masculine, the male energy as well as the female energy. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपके अंदर खाली मेल एनर्जी है. It's a balance. But yes, you are tilted towards what you are. And it is possible as a man also that you can be tilted towards more of the female energy. And that is what is the case of gays. And in a lot of cases, female also have male energy and female energy. National and racial pain bodies. Certain countries in which many acts of collective violence were suffered or perpetrated have a heavier collective pain body other than others. This is why older nations tend to have stronger pain bodies. It is also why younger countries such as Canada or Australia and those that have remained more sheltered from the surrounding madness such as Switzerland tend to have lighter collective pain bodies. Of course, in those countries, people still have their personal pain body to deal with. But if you are sensitive enough, you can feel a heaviness in the energy field of certain countries as soon as you step off the plane. In other countries, one can sense an energy field of latent violence just underneath the surface of everyday life. In some nations, for example, in the Middle East, the collective pain body is so acute that a significant part of the population finds itself forced to act it out in an endless and insane cycle of perpetration and retribution through which the pain body renews itself continuously. In countries where the pain body is heavier but no longer acute, there has been a tendency for people to try and desensitize themselves to the collective emotional pain. In Germany and Japan, through work, in some other countries, through widespread indulgence in alcohol, which, however, can also have the opposite effect of stimulating the pain body, particularly if consumed in excess. China's heavy pain body is to some extent mitigated by their widespread practice of Tai Chi, which amazingly was not declared illegal by the communist government that otherwise feels threatened by anything it cannot control. Every day, in the streets and city parks, millions practice their movement meditation that stills the mind. This makes a considerable difference in the collective energy field and goes some way towards diminishing the pain body by reducing thinking and generating presence. Spiritual practices that involve the physical body, such as Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga, are also increasingly being embraced in the Western world. These practices do not create a separation between body and spirit and are helpful in weakening the pain body. They will play an important role in global awakening. the collective racial pain body is pronounced in Jewish people who have suffered persecution over many centuries. Not surprisingly, it is strong as well in Native Americans whose numbers were decimated and whose culture all but destroyed by the European settlers. In Black Americans too, the collective pain body is pronounced. Their ancestors were violently uprooted, beaten into submission, and sold into slavery. The foundation of American economic prosperity rested on the labor of 4 to 5 million black slaves. In fact, the suffering inflicted on Native and Black American has not remained confined to those races, but has become part of the collective American pain body. It is always the case that both victim and perpetrator suffer the consequence of any acts of violence, oppression, or brutality. For what you do to others, you do to yourself. It doesn't really matter what proportion of your pain body belongs to your nation or race, or what proportion is personal. In either case, you can only go beyond it by taking responsibility for your inner state now. Even if blame seems more than justified, as long as you blame others, you keep feeding the pain body with your thoughts and remain trapped in your ego. There is only one perpetrator of evil on the planet, human unconsciousness. That realization is true forgiveness. With forgiveness, your victim identity dissolves and your true power emerges, the power of presence. Instead of blaming the darkness, you bring in the light.